balancing your spiritual health and intuition with your physical health and mental health. Does it matter? It's episode 7 of Music, Spirit and Accountability with Jay Hode, Michael Cooper, and special guest Jessicka Anne. All right, here we go. Our first guest on Music, Spirit and Accountability. We have in the house today Jessicka Anne. Make some noise, everyone. We're super excited to have you here, Jess. Jessicka is actually one of my dear friends, and we've bonded on so many levels, especially with music in the beginning. She's got one of the most incredible taste in music of everyone that I know. The 9 Inch Nails tattoo on the wrist just like tops up. It's the icing on the cake, representing as she holds it up to the camera here. Beautiful. Now, Jess, welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
It's interesting. Today is I don't know how much you guys dive into astrology. However, we've got some big movements that have happened over the past week. So definitely feeling some of those sixth house pieces.
Straight up. Can you share a bit about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So can you share, because I felt like last week.
So we had the full moon last week, which was in Virgo. So Virgo is all about service. It's about health. It's about how we look after ourselves. It's about our routines. And then we also had the massive transition of Saturn into Pisces, which is all about spiritual discipline and also where we may elude ourselves or delude ourselves around spirituality. And for me, Pisces governs my 6th house. So for me, it's just like you've got this Virgo supercharged focus on how well are you taking care of yourself, what are your disciplines and your boundaries, with this then spiritual overtone in the house that governs my health domain. So this last week has been kind of like, get serious about how you're looking after yourself, and any area that's not happening has been super highlighted. But collectively, we're really feeling this. And we've got one of the most intense aspects over this next week, after which time it will begin to clear. We're over the last, at the time of recording, what are we? We're the 13th of March. We're in the last week of Pisces season, which signifies the end of the astrological year. So we are seeing some final finishing touches to what was 2022. And we're about to really go through the birth canal into 2023 energetically. So a bit of some people feeling really juicy, some people feeling really tired. It's a bit of a mixed bag.
On a personal note, I'm going to be selfish here and ask, the week after that, what's happening? I got something on. I just would love to know what's happening the week after.
So 22nd of March is when we actually experience the full rebirth into 2023. So we're moving into Aries energy. Aries is the initiator. So really great time for us to, and if you think about it as a element and really pull it back, Aries is fire, and it's cardinal fire. And fire is aligning with the vision and how we see and how we imagine. So in that respect, really, really great time for planting seeds and beginning to direct that energy that way. And we've also got the autumn equinox here in Australia. So we're at that transition out of summer officially into autumn. So it's actually the time of the harvest as well. Yeah.
That is amazing. Thank you. That's the best. I'll share in a future podcast what that means to me, but that's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
We're going to have to stay on the line afterwards, Michael, so you can tell me, because I'm just sharing what's alive and I want to hear what's
I think we need to hear it now, brother. Like,
No, we spoke about this, Jay. I can't speak about it until it's done.
Okay, beautiful.
So, Jess, you're going to have to catch on the podcast. I'm sorry. I'm sealed on it. I would love to share it, but I've made a vow not to share until I've executed and completed the task.
It's actually really timely for 2023, because that's one of those big things that we're being invited into this year, is sort of keeping silent until the things speak for themselves. So you're working with the underground kind of energies that are trickling through 2023 anyway. So that's exciting.
Very exciting. So thank you for that share. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jess. I love your shares about, the astrology and the magic that your wisdom is incredible. Now, you're here for a reason because your magic is so profound that I don't know. Every time you speak about what you do, it blows me away, and it's just really inspiring to me and to be blending these worlds. So, like in a nutshell, you kind of shared that you're supporting people, blending this kind of 3-dimensional and 5-dimensional world in a sense. Almost the physical and the spiritual is part of the magic that you share, and some of the things that you've said to me throughout my career and my creating has been monumental and life-changing in the direction that I've chosen to go in my past at that time. You're offering amazing certification programs and business coaching. I feel those words when I think of you as a business coach. I know that's what you do, but it's just so much more. There's so much more to it. So love to hand it over to you and share a bit about why you think the work you do is so important. I know it's so unique. How does this set you apart? How did you get into this? What's the magic of this work?
There can be the really long version of this, or there can be the short version of this. It's like, it began on the day that I was born. But realistically, if I speak into how I came across this path, and I'm sure you'll probably find this with many of your other guests, and also from what I know of your story, Michael, and yours as well, Jay, often this work tends to find its way to us. Like my dad had his, I guess, awakening, for want of a better way to put it, when I was about 9. And he started practicing yoga because of back pain. He'd suffered an experience where he injured his back. So for him, it was this journey of wanting to look at holistic ways of healing, because he had the option of either go into surgery, which could potentially result in you being in a wheelchair, or look for alternatives. So for him, it was yoga. But what that
seems to be a catalyst for so many, just by the way. I just hear that story all the time. So once again, there it is.
Yeah, huge. And so what that meant for me as the eldest child, and amongst, particularly because where my dad comes from, he was the only guy practicing yoga. When he used to go there, it was like in an RSL hall with a bunch of women in their 50s. He was the only guy there. So it certainly wasn't something that a lot of his mates that he would be drinking with or hanging out with were doing. So guess who got dragged along to those things? Jess. So great for me, because I was alongside him as he was learning about things like chakras and starting to integrate more of his unique spirituality. So I got a lot of this secondhand. I have this memory of him dragging me along to the Theosophical Society as a young person and being surrounded by all of these books that I thought were things that only existed in fantasy movies. So it was one of those things that I'm forever grateful for. And at the time, I certainly couldn't have seen the path that it was leading me down. But looking back, I'm like, that makes so much sense. But then comes along high school, highly intellectual, analytical brain for me. I was like, right, now we're all about the science. I need things to make sense. So a lot of this sort of spiritual kind of stuff got swept to the wayside, or at least practiced in private. So this is me, 15, 16, super science mind. Meanwhile, like Googling Aleister Crowley and how to do magic on the internet. And ultimately, I feel like that has kind of been my journey, has been very much, how do I function in a world where I'm highly rational and I like things to make sense, but I also have this deep connection and this grounding, and there's things that exist beyond this world that so far we don't have rational explanations for. So that was the path that led me down, exploring how do I bring these spiritual concepts to rational minds, and how do I make it accessible? And that was one of the reasons that I originally created my certification program, is because what I was finding is I could do NLP coaching with someone and I'd get them to a point. But when I would work with this energetic work and start bringing in more of these intuitive pieces that I'd kind of been cultivating off in secret and in private, suddenly people were getting rapid transformation and rapid results. So the energetic certification was, how can I support these people that need it to make sense to actually connect with this energetic piece and have a felt experience of it, and how to work with it to support others. In the background for me, that was also alongside business coaching, because what I always find, the people that would enter my space one-on-one, half the time they'd be entrepreneurs, and suddenly things would start to explode in their business. And they kept going to me, you're my business coach. And I remember at first I got super triggered by it. I'm like, I'm not a business coach. I'm here to do energetic alchemy and things like that with you. How can you say that I'm a business coach? Particularly because, when I was covert and often the distance practicing my spirituality, I was in the corporate space. So I'd come from like what business meant. I'd managed high performance teams. I'd come from that infrastructure. So the idea of doing business felt like a certain death for me. So a lot of what I'd come to represent in business and the way that I teach it now is actually integrating these spiritual pieces and allowing business to be part of you having a vehicle for your authentic expression and your spiritual growth and development.
Wow, that's incredible. Mike, I feel like that story just resonates probably deeply with your journey. When I hear Jess speaking about it, I think a lot of stuff about your journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. With the past of that corporate world and then transitioning into this version of life. And now I'm probably, yeah, quite similar to Jess in getting to go back to that space with this new version, which is always daunting. Yes. It was okay to leave, but going back there with this version is quite challenging. There's a lot of internal judgment that comes with that, and how will I be perceived, and who is this guy that doesn't wear a suit anymore, doesn't wear shoes, has a beard, has no hair? I mean, we don't even know this guy anymore.
I love him so much.
Yeah, me too, but they don't know him yet. So yes, deeply resonate, yeah.
And it's so easy, I just love the way you explain that, Jess. It's so easy for us to overlook that spiritual side or our heart's passion and get lost in the creation. And not there's anything wrong with that. It's part of the journey, or lost in what we think we should be or what someone else thinks we should be, maybe even more appropriately. So, yeah, have you had to kind of, bring that accountability for yourself along the way to be like, no, I'm not going to do that, and, cut some cords or say no to certain opportunities to create other opportunities? And how does that feel for you?
I love that's one of the things when we spoke before the recording started. I said I'd really love to riff with you on the idea of accountability, because as much as it's important to have networks of accountability, ultimately at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, the person we're most accountable to is ourselves and our soul, right? So part of why my unique expression and the way that I teach business is the way that it is because I've scaled a business that was like a bit what you mentioned, Jay, to the book, to the letter. And it should have been successful, and it should have been what made me happy. And when I got to that point of having books so full, I was turning clients away, and a system that I'd created to basically generate money with my eyes closed, I realized how deeply unfulfilled I actually was. So that decision, also being someone that creates such deep relationships with my clients, there was also the threads of loyalty there. It's like letting people down. These people have come to rely on me. These people have come to know my services. Is this just me looking for the bright and shiny thing out on the distance and on the horizon that's not my current reality? Like, what is going on? This is everything that I've worked for. And making the decision to walk away from that, I think, was probably one of the biggest pieces of self-accountability I've exercised, because I knew that my soul was calling for something else.
Wow, Jess, that just hit so many golden nuggets there for me, and I'm sure for so many. And I saw, Mike, your eyes kind of light up in the middle there too.
Yeah, very much so.
Wow, Jess. Yeah, again, thank you for sharing. So, what are you creating in this time? Like, what's in the current for you? I think you've launched some new programs recently, and what's in the current for the future? You always seem so busy, but so on point. And I love the way you're able to kind of withdraw at times for your, sabbaticals? Is that what you would call them, where you kind of withdraw for, some time to kind of, tune into what you feel you need, and then to come back with full power to really lean into the next part of your creation. How's that all landing for you?
It's been an interesting process because I'm someone that loves doing. Like, that's one thing that I've definitely reconciled with myself. I think probably a healthy dose of when I first got into this work was a lot about the being. It's like, be, go be. It's just like, okay, I've done the being. And guess what I really also love doing? So I think that was a big medicine for me to integrate as a female-bodied person in my expression, because I think that sometimes as a woman in the spiritual community, in the transformation space, we're kind of taught it's more about being. So I think if you are a woman that loves to do, embrace that, and also make sure that you are creating the time and the space to be and have your own unique flavor of what works for you. And that's something that I feel like I'm in a space of refinement of always. So I tend to get very excited and on a high and flowing with the current. And the next thing, my body breaks down. And I'm like, okay, maybe not as good at listening as I thought I was. So being aware of where your energy is coming from and what your intention is really key. So that was just my aside from what you were saying about my sabbaticals. It's definitely a learning process, and that's a bit of self-accountability for me. It's just like, I love being in creation. Let's do the creation all of the time. It's like, okay, and how are you actually feeling? How's your energy? Are you filling your cup? So that is, I think, ironically, a lot of what my clients get from me, and I have reflected back. It's like, oh, since I've been working with you, I'm so much better at that. I'm like, okay. But in terms of creations at the moment, I've had this project that's been birthing for the better part of 18 months, which I finally feel has fully landed and feels very much alive in my cells, which is this integration of a business mastermind, and a mystery school initiation.
Wow.
So, yes, because to me, in terms of all of the schools of spirituality I've explored, magic has been the thing that I have come back to again and again. And it is that font of self-responsibility that I think makes magic so exciting. It's this idea that everything you need exists within you, and it's only about really tapping into it. So that's the mystery school side of it that I am bringing through with the mastermind.
And when I think of mystery school, I think of, well, there's a few things I think of. One is I think of Harry Potter, and I think of Glastonbury, and I think of being at the priestess school in Glastonbury, which I think is also called a mystery school, which is beautiful priestesses gathering from all over the world to work with the ley lines and work with the country and the land and the spirits. So what does your mystery school look like in that sense?
So I love that you brought that comparison up, because you're 100%. What you just thought of is 100% what everyone thinks of when they think about magic, when they think about mystery schools. And I think it's beautiful. I honestly do. I think that those kind of mystery schools where you are so deeply immersed and that is your reality are required. It's like, when going on retreat, where for 7 days or 2 weeks, you are in that retreat space and you are steeped to your bones in that as a culture and a way of being. And for me, the mystery school that I am pulling through is more about how can you be a high-performing entrepreneur and still have a deep connection to this spiritual facet of self and integrate that into your work. Work with the fundamentals of ritual, of magic, and bring that through to support what it is that you're already doing well and enhance it, rather than having to go away and run away to a retreat or to a space that's only dedicated to that. How can your life become the ritual? How can the business become the ritual? So it's really looking at merging this into a way that enhances rather than creates further segregation.
Wow, Jess. And the potency of incorporating, ritual and these spiritual practices with business. I don't know. For me, it's been a game changer. Whether the spiritual practice is, fitness or breath work or yoga or, for some it might even be to, not being on social media or something so much like that. I don't know if that's technically a spiritual practice, but you know what I mean. Like that commitment and accountability to show up. I guess when did your journey start to realize the potency of those spiritual practices? You said when you were seeing in your clients, sort of seeing these changes in these ways. When did that land for you about spiritual practice being incorporated with business?
So I was definitely witnessing it as something that I was doing in my business. Like I said, with my clients, even back when I was in the fitness industry, where I would be working with these things, and the people that had the combination of mindset, body, and energy work were the clients that were getting the best results. So for me, I was like, it's interesting that every time I throw this energy or this unseen, for want of a better way to put it, work into the mix, the results get better. So what it was for me when I got into this business and realizing this next iteration of what it was that I wanted to create, it was working with magic that allowed me to see things beyond what made sense. So
Perfect.
to put that another way, it was through ritual that I was finally able to connect more deeply with this thing that prior just felt like a nudge that I needed to follow. It's like I've just had this calling to do this thing and I'm not quite sure how to articulate it, what it wants to look like. Through ritual practices, through integrating shamanic practices into what it is that I do. It was that allowed me to not only create the certification, like the entire syllabus that I created actually downloaded through my dream space, but my whole business has been founded on working with these magical principles. And whenever I've strayed from that path, things get freaking hard. And it's like it's just that reinitiating myself into, oh, yes, the magic is important. I come back and things start to flow again. So I've definitely alpha beta tested it, and I say it's easier with magic.
So cool, Jess. Mike, is there anything you wanted to say, brother?
Yeah, I'd love to know, Jess, if I'm sitting, at home listening to this podcast, with the people that you work with specifically, I'm sitting there. What are some of the problems or the mistakes that you see them make or they're making consistently?
I feel that one of the biggest misconceptions, and I think I touched on it briefly, is this idea that magic is something that is so separate from the way that we live, first and foremost. I think that a lot of people overcomplicate that connection to spirituality and to their spiritual self. And as a result, they pause and they delay, and it becomes less and less of a priority. And as a result, what that then creates is that we're at a rift. We're torn between this inner knowing and the rational mind, which over time just slows down decision making. Like even people like Steve Jobs, he spoke about the intuition being something that came along to support the intellect. Actually, I think that was Einstein, but I know Steve Jobs had a great quote about the intuition as well. Yeah. So in terms of visionary entrepreneurs and people that have a big mission or an impact that they're here to create in the world, cultivating that connection with intuition can be as simple as you having a practice 20 minutes a day. It's not something that is out of the realm of possibility. And of course, just like fitness or anything else, the more energy and time you devote to it, the more prowess and the more skill and the more attuned to it you are. However, just like you wouldn't neglect your physical body or your mental health, often the deprioritizing of spiritual health, it's felt. Because all of these bodies are linked. Like, Ayurvedic medicine knows that. It's like we're all connected to all of these levels. If something's out of kilter higher up, it's inevitably going to rattle down and affect the physical body. So that's probably the biggest mistake, is this idea that my spiritual health doesn't matter. Yeah. And the other one that I wrapped into that is it's the idea that it's only for some people in certain circumstances. It's like you don't need to go live in an ashram for spirituality to be something that's incorporated into what you do.
Yeah.
And the last one that I'll say is this idea that spirituality and spiritual practice, magic, and the reason I particularly use that word is because it's one of those ones that immediately evokes images of Voldemort and Harry Potter. And for me, the reason I want to take ownership of that word is that most personal development is just magic repackaged. So magic is actually more integrated into the transformation space than most people realize. So even if you are someone that is coaching high-level corporate company executives working with magic, it doesn't need to be something that is just for people on the fringes of society. It's always going to enhance.
Wow. Blown away, Jess. Just completely blown away. Great question too, Mike.
Thank you. I think that looking back over my own corporate life and business, and I remember reading Steve Jobs saying that towards the end, that meditation was one of the greatest, fast tracking towards success. If you want to do well in business, meditate. And I was like, what? He's lost it. He's sold out. And I was in the hustle and grind mentality and thought it was a lie and a whole thing. And eventually I learned to meditate. He wasn't lying. Turns out he was telling the truth. But yeah, it was so hard for me to grasp that slowing down to speed up, slowing down to see the whole picture or be the observer. But I couldn't fathom that in my hustle and grind mentality and do more and be more and have more, and which ultimately means I was just doing more because I didn't have the other two. And it's so true. But there's this, as you've articulated beautifully, it's not, but we do. I did back then think it was for the fringes. It was for the woo-woos. It's for the out there, and they're not really all together. There's that perception, but they actually are quite together. metaphorically speaking as well, because they've integrated all the parts and they've brought everything back home. Plus, they also have sound mind and observer views. So, yes, they were well ahead of their time.
I love that. I love that plan words as well.
Yes.
Absolutely. Jess, the this principle, we had a chat last week about some other bits and pieces, and I was saying that some of the things in my life that I've noticed with my manifestations and the abundance and the things unfolding in my life are almost like clockwork as I've wanted them to be with my career and my offerings, and that thing of this vibration of joy and gratitude coming into the space, being that as I've been crafting this without even really noticing or being aware, I was coming with so much joy and gratitude throughout my journey consistently that now, it wasn't until I started studying Joe Dispenza specifically that I really was like, oh wow, this is kind of exactly what he's saying everyone should do. Is I think I've kind of just been doing it out of luck my whole life. What do you think about that? What do you think of the power of joy and gratitude mixed with these manifestations and the power of magic compared to having a crack at, let's say, magic or manifestation coming from a low vibration?
It's quite interesting because the more I've gone down the rabbit holes of magic and understanding how people manifest, if we wanted to take it purely rational, so let's just delete the fabric of the unseen realm for a second, just say we can explain everything rationally through the mind. Essentially, a lot of manifestation and magical rituals is just working with the unconscious. So if you think about the reticular activating system as something that is seeking proof for that which we already believe, like suddenly I really want to buy a Tesla. Suddenly you start seeing Teslas everywhere, right? So essentially a lot of the ritual practices, manifestation practices, what we're looking at doing is embedding an unconscious belief or an idea, which is also why I talk about a lot of personal development is exactly that. We're looking to rewire the fabric of the unconscious. So one of the biggest ways for us to hack the unconscious is through emotional states. So if you think about things that imprint in memory, it is the highly emotional. So it's like if I said to you, what did you have for breakfast yesterday morning? You might remember. However, if you had breakfast yesterday morning with someone you dearly loved and it was a super poignant moment, that's going to be something that is seared into the mind so much more powerfully than something that just was maybe a non-event. So when we're working with these vibrational states of joy and gratitude, we're essentially placing importance of that in the unconscious. So suddenly that is now something that has moved forward in the order of priority, as opposed to something that is, again, a non-event. So it's ironic because some people actually work better manifesting through other heightened emotional states. So it's not just joy and gratitude.
Wow.
Some people are very powerful, angry, manifestors.
Oh, wow.
So if you've got to channel your fury and your rage, some people manifest better through that. So it's more about the power of emotion as opposed to joy and gratitude. However, do you want to be going around your entire life angry? Possibly not. So in terms of, I guess, a more sustainable, healthful approach, joy and gratitude is probably more better for your nervous system long term.
Have either of you given any thought, research or study to manifesting during orgasm?
Yes. Sex magic.
Sex magic, yeah.
Yeah,
like it's
100%.
Well, Jess, do you want to share what you have uncovered there?
Oh, that could go layers and layers deep. However, if we think about the manifestation of life on Earth, right? It's like in terms of where we originate from, birth, the birthing process begins with orgasm. So if orgasm can create life, it's essentially manifestation is a process of bringing something to life.
Yes.
So it's the same channels.
And it's also like a continuation of what you just said, which is joy, love, and gratitude. That's at the human experience in this 3D thing. It's probably the highest and closest point we have to God. And it's that singularity. It's the closest we get to singularity in this thing that we get to run around in. And it's a very joyful moment for the vast majority of people, for a very high amount of people. And it's quite euphoric. So if you're talking about without the sex, just the way to manifest is with joy, love, and gratitude. Well, that's an exponential rocket ship to manifestation. It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thanks for bringing that, Mike. That's a great topic, and with that, my experience with that has, I dove in really deep with that for a few years and was trying all sorts of manifestation, conscious manifestations within that, and it can sound really, just presencing it could sound a little, I don't know. Risque or something for a lot of people, like what are they even talking about, but it kind of becomes normal as well after you're practicing these things, and just like anything else, it is a practice and it takes practice, and they're really fun things to practice as well, especially in a beloved union or even by yourself, but a beloved union as well. It's beautiful having those sort of conscious partners that can meet you there as well. I have a question for you both, and I would love to hear your definition of the word spirit. What does spirit or spirituality, let's just keep it maybe a simple couple of syllables of the word spirit. How does the word spirit land for you? Maybe Jess, would you like ladies first?
Yeah.
So I think the way that I would relate to spirit is the universal principle. It's this idea of the thing that exists in all things.
Yes.
Beautiful.
That's hard to beat. I was singularity, the great spirit, great mystery, the original thought, the love frequency, the God molecule, all of that leads me towards spirit. So I think Jess's definition was divine. Can you say that again for us? Because it might have just flowed out of you, but if you can remember it.
I was about to say, it does that.
Yeah, and
It was
maybe
just
even just expanding on that a little bit, just too. It's so beautiful to hear you speak about
really
this.
beautiful.
So yeah, could you elaborate a little bit for us?
So unifying principle, it's the thing that exists within all things. If we think about the idea of respiration, it comes from the idea of taking in breath, right? So to respire, to bring in spirit. So in all things exists spirit, and we are all of spirit. So to become more spiritual is to just become more of all things and with all things.
That is beautiful. Really.
Really, Jess, thank you.
Yeah, wow. Jay, I throw it over to you if you feel called to.
Yeah.
100%. Thank you, Jess. That was divine.
For me, I don't know. I really resonate with, the expansiveness of of breath and spirit. I guess for me, spirit translates, I think, directly to the word breath. So to be more spiritual is literally to breathe, and I just define it in that simple way often to people that are I seem to have this thing where people come to me often as I feel like I'm somewhat of a stepping stone for people, especially coming that I spent for the last 20 plus years playing in as a musician, playing in some mid to low level vibration venues and people along the way, and something that often Dazza and Bazza and Shazza have said to me, man, I'd like to become more spiritual. You seem pretty spiritual. How do I become more spiritual? And I say something like, just breathe. Like, just be aware of breath and just, coming back to the awareness of the inhale and the awareness of the exhale, as simple as it is, to just come back to the presence of being in touch with breath. And it's that simple. So if you want to be more spiritual, just breathe and start bringing awareness and presence to focusing on that inhale and that exhale for a few minutes a day and see what happens. I think that's a great place to begin.
Definitely agree with that, for sure.
Amazing. Both of you. Beautiful. Yeah.
Jess, one more question for you, statement question. I guess you, like I said at the beginning, have such an incredible taste in music, and I love our conversations about all the musics that we both vibe on. And do you incorporate music with your work? And how do you feel of the potency of the frequencies of music and music in general relating to spiritual practice?
As you spoke into that, I felt like my heart just really come online, because I think music for me has always been such a gateway into being able to communicate and connect with things that exist beyond words. Even lyrics, I think, in and of themselves often have this unique ability to transcend the limitation of ordinary language. And 100% music plays a deep role in what it is that I do. And I think that in order for people to connect with the facets and dimensions of self, even archetypically, music is such a powerful vessel for being able to burst through these places that, oh, I could never be that. It's like, that's part of why when I do a lot of embodiment work, like I love putting on something like a bit of Marilyn Manson. I'm like, let's just jam to this for a bit and just see what part of you comes out now.
Yeah.
It's that piece of that integration of the shadow self and being able to vibe with that part of self, and because when those things get brought to light and we observe them and we witness them and we own them, suddenly we can channel them and work with them rather than having power over us. So I love music as a vessel for those facets of self. That's a piece that always speaks to me. Yeah.
And Mike?
Oh, obviously, I use music. You know that in my ceremonies, music allows people to, it really assists in leaving the logical brain for a while. It takes them on a journey or a story, or they take themselves on their own journey through to sound. Through, whether it be through Indigenous instruments or even song or voice. The frequencies of the human voice are enough to heal. I know I've been in many of healings that I've been a participant in, and an angelic woman's voice cracks my heart open nearly every time. And it's the most beautiful sound. So, I really do think people, I look at my kids even, and they sing songs, and they're constantly singing, and they know all the words to that because it's a way to communicate. It's a way to tell a story. They resonate with that song because to the artist and whatever they're going through and navigating, and even for the artist that's helping them navigate and unpack things through story. So I think, Jay, you shared this with me, is the word musician originated from magician.
Yep.
And there's a beautiful tie-in to this whole conversation.
Yeah, I love that. It's something that I share with people often. I had a new student starting this morning somewhere in the center of America, such a beautiful soul. And it blew his mind, like the smile on this guy's face, sharing that information and seeing him looking up, thinking about this, magician back in, the nights of the medieval days, and the musician and coming from that. It's so cool. And just to add to what you guys were saying, it's so profound to me, studying sound healing so much of my life, and studying intervals and music, and the principle that two notes against each other create an emotion, and that being, let's say, for all the music geeks out there, a minor third creates that sensation of sadness. So it really always blows me away with what you guys were saying about the words and the delivery of the words. If you put that combinations of words that say something maybe sad or heartfelt with the two syllables of that word on a minor third interval jump up or down, the profound added impact in the delivery of that is exponential, just like if you were going to put that with a major third, which would have a happy sound. And that's, some of my favorite songwriters, some of them go that way, the first option, or some of them, I think of Michael Franti, who's one of my biggest inspirations, who has kind of often cheeky, almost confronting lyrics. I think of his album Yell Fire back in, I think it was mid 2000s, 2006, 2007, and he went to Iraq in the middle of all the civil unrest that was kind of going on there at the time, and wrote this insane album all about what was going on there. And it was kind of dark, and then he came back and put it with these like super upbeat like grooves that's just like you shake your butt off, and he's singing about all this stuff, and you don't really notice it, but it's still landing. It's like, yeah, you're fire, but it's so happy and everyone's yelling along and singing and dancing, but it's kind of confronting. So it's such a powerful vessel.
I think there's something you shared with me as well. I'm not sure what the note is, but I think it was a minor, and you said there's tension in the chord. and it needs to be resolved. And you do, like, you hear the chord and you're like, oh, and then they resolve and you're like, thank you, like there's that tension and release. And that's the joy of music and what it can create.
100%. And yeah, the minor third definitely can have that resolution down to a second, or it'd be called probably a ninth, but a sus4 is the chord I think you're talking about, a suspended fourth, which, as for all the guitarists out there, you see D sus often, D sus4. That's one of the chords, that sus chord, the fourth resolving back down to the major third. That's literally
Yeah.
tension and release, and it's like the sus chord is taking an in breath, holding the breath, and when the sus4 is released back to a D major chord, it's like an exhale. And there's so many more potent things, but for all the sound healers out there, it's I don't know. I feel like it's important to do the work. If sound healing, there's so many beautiful aspects on that, but it is nice to know a little bit about that stuff as a sound healer coming into that world. So yeah, potent tools to manipulate, support, expansify, if that's even a word, a space through, and then there's rhythm. We're not even tapping into the rhythm side of things, but that melodic side and harmonic side alone is, lights me up. So yeah, beautiful. Jess, thank you so much for your time today. Really incredible. We would love to have you back on down the track and continue. You've given us, I think, a lot of fuel and fire for upcoming topics to dive deeper into with me and Mike. So I appreciate your magic so much. Where can people find you?
One of the best places to find me would probably be on Instagram. So my handle is the Jessicka Anne, spelt with a CK. A for the Jessica and ANNE for the Anne.
And just to close that, you are one of the coolest looking cats that I've ever seen. Whenever I see your photos and stuff on social media, it's just like, I love your look. It's so cool to me. And just the way you represent yourself, just really honoring your unique magic and the way you just lean into it with your heart and soul, coming from your heart and your art and all your magic. And thank you again for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to speak to two leaders and pillars of this community in this space. So thank you.
Appreciate you, Jess. Thank you so much. And Jay, if we could just put Jess's details in the notes, that would be easier for everyone to find her.
100%. Let's do that.
Jess, much love. That was beautiful. So much gold and insights, and the way you articulated some of the things, especially around spirit, was really special. I've heard you speak at Jay's events, and it flowed through again today. So much love, sister. Thank you.
Guys, if you feel it, jump on the socials and give Jess some love. If there's anything that came up for you, and give her some love and some support. See you soon, guys. Thank you.